Hyvää uutta vuotta, hyvät katsojat, ja tervetuloa vuoden 2025 ensimmäiseen Israel-studioon. Tänään minulla on kunnia pitää vieraana Israelin uutta suurlähettilästä Boaz Rodkinia. Tämä ohjelma kuvataan hieman ennen joulua, joten tässä on saattanut tapahtua kaikenlaista kuvaushetken ja tämän esityshetken välillä. Ja totta kai tulemme sitten käsittelemään niitä merkittäviä tapahtumia, jos niitä on ollut, niin aivan seuraavissa ohjelmissa. Ambassador of Israel, Boaz Rodkin, welcome to Israel studio.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
It's an honor for us, and let's first talk about you. We have so many things to discuss here, but as an ambassador, so you've been a diplomat for a while, I would say. How did you become a diplomat, and why?
Yes, so following my military service in Israel, I went to study in the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. I studied international relations. I was always interested in international politics and diplomacy. And when I had an opportunity after my graduation from the Hebrew University, I went to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I joined the cadet course for diplomats. That was back in 1990, so 34 years ago. And since then, I started my political and diplomatic career as a career diplomat, and I had the honor to represent Israel in several countries. I started my career in Mexico City, and then I went back to Israel. Then I served also in Dublin, Mexico. My previous position before arriving to Helsinki, I was in headquarters, but before that, I was ambassador in Albania.
Okay. You arrived in Helsinki in August, just about 5 months ago. So how has it been here?
So far, it has been very, very interesting, very active, meeting a lot of people, getting to know the place, trying to see as much as I can, and also, of course, to promote Israel-Finland's relations. And so far, it's been going very well. I think many meetings, getting to know as many people as I can, and I think that we are on a good track.
How about the darkness?
Well, this is very unusual, you know. Coming to this studio this morning, I thought to myself that I've never seen so much snow around in my entire life. Of course, and that's not counting, I don't know, ski holidays somewhere on the mountains. But then this is very different from us coming from the Middle East, for sure.
And the snow is not that high as we've used to in recent years, so you can expect something more coming.
Yeah, so understand.
Okay. Looking back, 2024, how do you see it? What kind of a year was that for you and for Israel?
Yes, so 2024 was very much a continuation of October 2023. Since this brutal terrorist attack on Israel on the 7th of October, and then from the Gaza Strip by terrorist organizations, and then one day later, on the 8th of October, started another attack on Israel from Lebanon, from Hezbollah. So October 23 was a turning point, I think, and then the entire year of 2024, we were very much busy with that, of course, bearing in mind that we have hostages in Gaza, our brothers and sisters still being kept there, and we have to do whatever we can in order to ensure the return to Israel. And meanwhile, also combating and defending our country against those people, those organizations and countries that want to strike against us and want to engage in a war between us. So very much so, 2024 was a continuation of October 23.
Right. So there are still about 100 hostages in Gaza, and as we now record this, just a few days before Christmas, so there are some positive news, expecting that there would be a hostage deal. What we know about that?
Exactly. So on October 23, 251 people were captured and taken as hostages to Gaza. Since then, there was last November, so November 23, some exchange and some hostages were released. Our military also was successful in some operations releasing them, but true, nowadays there are still 100 people being kept there. Some of them sadly are not alive anymore, but we know for sure that many of them, dozens of them, are still alive. And there were several rounds of negotiations of trying to reach a deal in order to release the remaining hostages from the Gaza Strip. I think the recent elections in the US gave a new impetus to the process. And currently, as we speak, there are negotiations, Israeli delegations, and then interlocutors from the US and from Egypt, from Qatar, trying to reach a deal in order to release the hostages. Right. This is the main goal of the war. To release hostages and bring them all back home.
Right. So, as you mentioned, Egypt and Qatar have been involved, and many people are asking, especially about Qatar, is it part of the problem or part of the solution?
Yeah, so Hamas is a terrorist organization. Negotiating with terrorists is always very difficult. Even impossible. So you need interlocutors. Qatar is hosting, or was hosting for a long time, the leadership of Hamas, and you have to go through them in order to negotiate the release of the hostages. It's true that Qatar is also hosting not only the Hamas leadership, but also Al Jazeera network, a television network who provides lots of news which are not very accurate, to say the least, about the developments. But then again, we need whatever locutors that we may have in order to release our hostages.
Right, right. So there also with Egypt, you have a peace deal. You don't have diplomatic relations with Qatar, but with Egypt you have. And Egypt has kept their borders closed, but your defense forces, IDF, have found a lot of tunnels to Egypt. So what's the role of Egypt in this Gaza case in general?
Right, so it's true that we have a peace deal peace agreement with Egypt since 1979, so more than 40 years now. This is the biggest Arab nation and one of the most important Arab nations, and we are glad that we have a peace agreement, so we have a peaceful border. It's true that Hamas and Iran were using Egypt territory in order to smuggle arms and munitions and vehicles and what have you from Egypt through tunnels to the Gaza Strip. We are in ongoing talks with our Egyptian neighbors and trying to coordinate our efforts towards settlement or towards peace in the region, but it's not very easy, of course. And then those negotiations, those talks, those coordinations are going on even as we speak. The delegations, Israeli delegations, high-ranking delegations, mostly from the security establishment, are visiting Cairo on a continuous basis. But just as you say, we have good diplomatic relations with them. There is an Egypt embassy in Israel, and then Israeli embassy in Cairo.
But under their eyes, the tunnels have been there for years and smuggling all kind of things, including arms. So they must have known about this, or what's the situation about the tunnels in Egypt?
Yeah, so some of the tunnels, of course, they were dug under Egyptian soil. That's correct. And as I said, we are talking with them and providing them with information, with military intelligence when we have them, and we ask them to seal the border. This is why we are operating. The Israeli Defense Forces are operating also on the corridor, on the precise line between Egypt and the Gaza Strip nowadays, in order to prevent something like that happening in the future.
Right. I visited Israel less than 2 months ago, in mid-November, with a delegation of Finnish and Estonian parliament members, and we went up to the north, close to the Lebanese border, as well as to the Golan Heights. And just few days prior to the ceasefire deal, you were able to make with Hezbollah and Lebanon. So how calm is the border with Lebanon now?
So as we speak, the ceasefire is holding. Of course, after the attack of Hezbollah promoted by Iran as part of Iran's trying to encircle Israel by what they call the Ring of Fire and attack Israel from several fronts, from Lebanon, from Yemen, through the Houthis, from the Gaza Strip, from Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank also. But then, of course, we had to respond. Israel responded very heavily towards Hamas. And then, of course, the main aim of our military operation in Lebanon is to ensure our residents on the northern front and on the northern part of Israel, bordering with Lebanon, ensure the return safely to their homes. As I said, currently the ceasefire is holding. Residents of those communities in the north are slowly returning to their homes, and let's hope that the ceasefire will hold for the future. But then again, I must underline that we will not allow such an event of the 7th of October 2023 to repeat itself, not from the Gaza Strip and not from Lebanon. And this is why we were operating there since October last year until the ceasefire was reached in November.
Right. So we visited Masjid al-Shams, the Druze town, where 12 kids were killed by Hezbollah, and we met with parents of the killed kids and also the mayor, and they told us that they really want that IDF will conclude the mission and really erase Hezbollah. So they've been suffering from the rockets and all kinds of drones and other attacks for years, and so that was, maybe for me it was interesting that I heard this from the Druze community, and now there are news that some Druze communities in Syria, they have asked Israel to integrate them under Israeli leadership or governance. So how is the situation out there?
Yeah, so the attack on Majd al-Shams, of course, only shows the nature of Iran and its proxies, of terrorist organizations. They know no boundaries, and they can launch attacks even on school children playing football on Saturday afternoon. And just as you said, 12 children were killed. And of course, it's not only them that they suffered, but the entire population of the northern front, northern Israeli front. And Israel, I think, has struck very hard the Hezbollah, and I think the reason why developments in recent weeks have developed so fast in Syria, for example, and also in Lebanon, is because of Israel's response to Hezbollah's attack towards our population. Druze communities in Israel are part of the fabric of Israeli society. They go to military service like everyone else, and study with us in the university. I grew up in Haifa myself, in the northern part of Israel, and next to Haifa there are two very large Druze villages there, and they are our neighbors, and we cooperate in every walk of life. And it's true that there were some remarks from Druze villages from across the border in Syria, because there are Druze communities in Lebanon, in Syria, and in Israel, and all over the Middle East. There were some remarks, but then, of course, we have our operation in the Golan Heights nowadays is mainly aimed into securing our border with Syria for the future.
Before going to Syria, how far is the peace agreement with Lebanon? Is it in sight, or what hinders? I'm not meaning that Israel wouldn't be ready, but what hinders the Lebanese government from making peace with Israel?
Yeah, so the main issue with Lebanon for the last 20 years or even more is that a terrorist organization by the name of Hezbollah took over government there, and is parcel of the government there. So it's not only the military wing of this terrorist organization, but also the political wing. And in that sense, they will not allow the government of Lebanon to reach a peace agreement with Israel. We have no territorial dispute with Lebanon. There are several United Nations Security Council resolutions that are actually dictating or showing the way of how to reach a settlement in the northern front between Israel and Lebanon. And in that sense, I think peace can be reached also with Lebanon in the future, but not as long as Iran is operating there.
So now it seems that Hamas in Gaza is gone almost. The Hezbollah in Lebanon has collapsed, but Iran is still there. So they attacked you twice during the past year, and with heavy missiles, ballistic missiles and drones, and like never before. Yep. Luckily, you were able to defend yourself with your excellent air defense systems, and I'm happy that Finland also has acquired some of those powerful defense systems. But what about Iran?
Yeah, so Iran is actually the head of the snake, and they are using their proxies in order to attack Israel. And also, for the first time this year, they attacked Israel directly on April this year, and then in October, the 1st of October, trying to attack Israel directly. Of course, people who are familiar with the map of the Middle East, Israel is not sharing a border with Iran. They are a remote country, but then the ideology of Iran is to strike Israel. Of course, they do not recognize the state of Israel, and to attack it using their proxies. As I said before, Iran is the head of the snake, and then the international community should be aware that they should be stopped. The problem is in Iran is the leadership, of course. Again, in the past, there were good relations between Israel and Iran in the 1940s, 50s, up until the 1970s, until the Muslim revolution there in 1979. And we had good diplomatic relations with them. We have no issues or no conflicts whatsoever with the people of Iran. On the contrary, we wish for them to have their freedom and to get rid of their leadership in order for them to have the same rights and liberties that other people have in Europe, for example, in Israel, in the US, or what have you. Main problem, as I said, is the leadership of Iran, which is calling for the destruction of the state of Israel.
Yeah. Is the international community understanding what's going on with Iran?
I think slowly, the international community is beginning to understand that the issue and the main problem or the core issues of the Middle East is Iran and its attitude towards the Middle East. They have attacked not only Israel in the past, they've attacked Saudi Arabia and other Gulf countries. They are operating, as I said, through their proxies, attacking Israel. They are supporting Russia in its war against Ukraine since the last 2 or 3 years. So in that sense, the international community understands there. There are some sanctions imposed on the Iranian leadership recently by the US, by the EU, but of course there's more that could be done, and we are proving with documents and with military intelligence that Iran is the core of the problem of the Middle East, and then trying to stop any initiatives for peace in the Middle East.
Right. So Iran also has recently lost its grip to Syria. What's going on in Syria from the Israeli point of view?
That's correct. So again, coming back to the 7th of October, the idea of Iran and its proxies was to attack Israel and to encircle it with a ring of fire. But then again, 1 year later, or maybe 14 months later, we see that those who try to mess with Israel and to attack it are doomed to collapse. And then after the collapse and of Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hezbollah was very much helping the brutal dictatorship of Syria of maintaining in power. And since they were hit very hard in Lebanon, they could not support the Assad regime in Syria, and this is when rebels in Syria started to move and then head towards Damascus and to remove the dictatorship there. But one should bear in mind that some of these organizations used to belong to Al-Qaeda. Even the leader, Jawlani, was a member of Al-Qaeda. In the past, again, Islamic movement that is trying to take control of the Middle East, does not recognize Israel, and calling for the entire Middle East or the entire region to be Muslim. And they according to their beliefs, there should be no rooms for the so-called infidels, so that's Christians and Jews in the region. So
Right.
Syria is changing at the moment. The brutal dictatorship of the Assad, the family, has gone, but we have to be very cautious in dealing with them. And there are other issues there. Some minorities, like Druze and also the Kurdish minority, are suffering at the moment from attacks from different angles.
Right.
So one should be very careful when watching developments over there in Syria.
Okay, we have 2 minutes left. And my last topic relates to the United States. And just in a few weeks from now, there will be a new boss in the White House. What are you expecting from Donald Trump related to relations between Israel and the United States?
So Israel always had good relations with the United States, no matter who was in the White House, whether a Democrat president or a Republican president. But having said that, under the previous Trump administration, we were very lucky to move forward with peace in the Middle East, the famous Abraham Accords, and we reached peace agreements with some of the Arab nations, like from Morocco, like the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, and others. And we certainly hope that this initiative will continue under the future Trump administration. And of course, main goal would be also to reach an agreement with Saudi Arabia in that sense.
Right. And I have actually one more question. Also, the European Union has a new commission, and there is a new High Representative for Foreign Affairs, Estonian Kaja Kallas. And as you also cover as an ambassador Estonia, how do you see the change from Mr. Borrell to Ms. Kallas?
So we see the change very favorably. My minister, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Gideon Saar, has already met with Mrs. Kallas, and they had a very good discussion. And we see her taking the position as an opportunity for a new chapter in relations between the EU and Israel.
Right. And I have one more very final question about the relations between Finland and Israel.
So Israel and Finland are similar nations in many ways, small countries facing challenges across the border, but very advanced population. And then, and based on these similarities, we're trying to promote relations, economic relations, on education field. One of our goals of the embassy is to renew direct flights between Israel and Finland, between Helsinki and Tel Aviv. So it would be easier for Israelis to travel to Finland and easier for Finns, for our spectators, to travel to Israel and to visit the country. There's lots to be done. We are in good contacts with the authorities here, and we're looking forward for 2025 for some more developments on our bilateral relations.
So how about the UN and Finnish voting about Israel? Are you happy with that?
Well, you know, Risto, that between friends there are sometimes disagreements, and we have a disagreement with the Finland's government on that. We're not happy with the pattern of voting of Finland's in the UN, and we are in ongoing dialogue about that.
Okay, understood. Ambassador Rodkin, thank you very much for joining us in Israel's studio, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thank you.
Mitä Israelissa ja Lähi-idässä todella tapahtuu? Kaipaisitko laajempaa näkökulmaa ja ymmärrystä Israelin sekä Lähi-idän tilanteen syistä ja seurauksista? IRR-TVn viikoittain tuottama Risto Huvilan isännöimä Israel-studio vastaa näihin kysymyksiin laaja-alaisten ja monipuolisten asiantuntijoiden avulla, josta olemme saaneet paljon hyvää palautetta. Haluathan, että voimme jatkossakin tuottaa tätä ohjelmaa ja kehittää Israel-studiota entistäkin paremmaksi. Tule mukaan ja anna tärkeä tukesi luotettavan Israel-uutisoinnin puolesta. Lämmin kiitos lahjastasi.